So thank you all for coming. For those of you who don't know, I'm Paul Heinrich. I'm the President and CEO of the North Bay Regional Health Center. And on behalf of our volunteer board of directors, many of whom are in attendance today, we want to welcome you to our venue here at the North Bay Regional Health Center. We feel we're a very vital part of the community as the largest employer in this community, providing essential services in healthcare, and also contributing to the economic viability of this wonderful community that we live in. Almost immediately, we'll be hearing from the delegation from Baylor University to present their findings from the community-wide survey held in November. One of our board members is Kevin Hutchison, who's, along with his brother Tim, has been really the catalyst behind this activity. And so basically I'd acknowledge the two of you, and especially our board member, who's showing leadership in many aspects of our community. And yeah, thank you. So my main piece of this is just to welcome you, and then to call upon the mayor of our fine city, Al McDonald, to come give you some greetings. Thank you.
Ani, bienvenue, welcome. It is my pleasure to bring greetings on behalf of the City of North Bay. 1 year ago, when we envisioned setting up Invest North Bay, it was an opportunity for us to bring business and community leaders within our borders together to help build our city. And our community welcomed these individuals and have looked up to them to create change, to create a movement of growth in our city. And the idea behind creating this development corporation was for these individuals to reach out around the world, to open doors for us, to make connections, to provide us leads. And I can tell you, Mr. Hutchison, Kevin Hutchison, was the first one to stand up at the board and suggest this partnership with Baylor University. And I can tell you around the table, we were thrilled with what he has done. So when we started this, we never thought for a second that we would partner with an institution so well known in the United States and so well respected, and they're here with us today to present their findings for Phase One. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to, if you could give them, they're all standing here on both sides, big North Bay welcome. So I think you're going to find the results very interesting. We're very interested. We actually have two students. Am I giving too much away, Kevin? Two students here that are actually going to lead Phase Two, and I think Kevin's going to introduce them, so I won't take away his thunder. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the first step that we're taking to grow our city, and we hope that you listen very closely to what they have to say. Our community's spoken, and it's important that we listen. I think it's my job to introduce the chair of Invest North Bay, Paul Goulet.
Well, thank you, Mayor Al and Paul, and welcome everyone. Invest North Bay was formed first as an advisory board by the mayor just 9 months ago, not a full year, Al. Members of the board comprise current and former business and community leaders. All board members are volunteers, and all members are committed to a single purpose, that of improving the economic well-being of North Bay and the region around North Bay. Much of the initial work of the board has involved working with senior city staff, the Economic Development Department, and City Council in the creation of a development corporation. Many municipalities have adopted the development corporation model in order to work more nimbly and effectively in facilitating economic development opportunities. One of our members, Kevin Hutchison, brought forward a proposal to the board several months ago that involved approaching his former alma mater, the esteemed Baylor University, to take on as a project the development of a baseline and potential strategies for future economic development in North Bay. In life, sometimes you really do get what you ask for, and Baylor's involvement incredibly became a reality for the city of North Bay. To have an impartial academic third party with the credentials and global reputation that Baylor deservedly enjoys, working as a partner with the city of North Bay is truly a one-time opportunity and gift for all of us. On behalf of the Invest North Bay Board, I wish to welcome Baylor University back to the city. And on behalf of the board, thank you for your involvement here today and in advance for your efforts and partnership in the months ahead. I would now like to ask board member Kevin Hutchison to start the presentation. Thank you.
All right, folks, in the interest of time, I'll try to be quite quick with my remarks, and then Tim's going to formally introduce you folks to our good friends from Baylor. So thank you for the kind words. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to bring this opportunity to North Bay. It's been everything and more that we could ever hope for. It's great to be here at the North Bay Regional Health Center, an institution that does so much good for our community. We thank Paul, the board, and the senior leadership team for welcoming us here today. It's a pleasure. A sincere welcome and thank you to all of you, the citizens of North Bay. You've demonstrated immense leadership in providing open, honest, and meaningful feedback. Our commitment was that it would make a difference, and we hold true to that commitment, as you'll see today. A special thank you as well to the media, who have been phenomenal and have helped us from day one to tell our story. Each member of the volunteer board, and we like to emphasize volunteer, Invest North Bay Board has contemplated what he or she could bring to the table to improve the future of North Bay. Tim and I thought that we could potentially enlist the help of a great institution, Baylor University, our proud alma mater, to help us drive the city forward in the right way. Traditionally, Focus Firm, which is the program at Baylor that we're engaging for this project, involves partnerships with major corporations such as Dell, Microsoft, Walmart, Coca-Cola, American Airlines, and so on and so forth. While a number of major corporations wait on the sidelines for the opportunity to work with Baylor, the city of North Bay represents the Focus Firm project not for one, but for 2 full semesters, more than any other Focus Firm project in the history of Baylor. And as well, this is the only municipality that Baylor's ever worked with, and the only Canadian entity. So it's pretty phenomenal. Baylor is giving North Bay thousands and thousands of hours of qualified and informed insight for one reason and one reason alone: to help make North Bay an even better place to be. We're not paying them. We're not giving them any dollars. They are doing this to help us become better. This is a gift worth millions of dollars, and thank you to these fine folks for making it happen. Those that know Tim and I know that Baylor holds a very special place in our heart for good reason. And with that, Tim is going to introduce you folks to the people that we call family. So, Tim, please.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm very honored to be here today to introduce our friends, our family from Baylor. I'll start off with 4 individuals that I'm sure you folks all know quite well. They're the 4 students who have been working on this project since August. They've been up to North Bay once before. I believe they had a wonderful time here. They got to meet with a lot of key individuals, a lot of you folks around the community. And they're the ones who put together the survey that gave us this valuable pieces of information that we need to move forward. So we'll start off on my left here: Sarah Hill, Kevin Mitchell, Jared Haney, and Joe Gassler over here on my right. We're also very lucky to have 2 of the 20 students that are going to take on the reins, lead the project in Phase 2, starting in, well, I was going to say starting in January, but actually starting now, starting a week ago potentially. We have Carolyn Skies right here from Temple, Texas, and Bill Boyd from Dallas, Texas. They truly are excited to be a part of this project. I can speak for them. They actually had to compete for the opportunity to fly up here to be part of this event here in North Bay. So they're diehard students. They're excited about the opportunity to help North Bay. And we're very lucky and happy to have them here. In addition, our Baylor family is not only the students, but it's also the administrators, the professors who help the students and guide them along their path. We're very lucky to have two individuals from the administrative side here with us today. Lori Wilson is the director of the graduate program for the School of Business. She holds an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, both from Baylor. And prior to working at Baylor, she was actually working for the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, stationed in Africa. A wealth of knowledge, great person to bounce ideas off, to say the least. And standing just behind Lori, we have Dr. Gary Carini, who's the Associate Dean of the Graduate Business Program at Baylor. Dr. Carini has his master's degree in finance from the University of Southern California, and he also has a master's degree and a PhD in global strategy from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm not too sure if he'll want us to point this out or not. It's actually the same school that Donald Trump attended. Dr. Carini is a noted author, lecturer on strategic management, and very happy to have him here in North Bay today. So welcome to the Baylor Folks North Bay.
All right, folks, we're going to get right to this. It's worth noting that Lori was the individual that we interviewed with to get into Baylor. Had we known she worked for the CIA, that would have explained a lot. And Dr. Gary Carini was the individual that approved that. So they either have good judgment or terrible judgment. So we'll let you folks decide. So we're going to move to the presentation. It's all about the students. They've given so much to this community. We're taking upwards of 7 classes, international responsibilities, and the city of North Bay. The presentation should be about 25 minutes. What we're going to do following that is have an informal panel discussion among Baylor folks to address some of the main questions that we've heard throughout the last 4 months. Then what we'll do is following that, we're going to conclude the presentation. We're going to give the media an opportunity to scrum with the Baylor folks and city folks. For the audience, what we'll do, if you could be patient, as soon as that media scrum's over so that we can allow all the folks that aren't here to get the message as quickly as possible. Every single question, concern, anything you have on your mind, every single one of us will be available one-on-one basis at the front to answer your questions. So we're keeping with the transparency that we promoted from day one. Any question you have, we're going to answer it up at the front here after the media scrum. So I'd ask that you hold any questions or comments. Just note that any questions or comments you have, and the team will tackle it. So thank you so much, and as well, at the end of the presentation, we'll validate parking, if you stay for the whole thing. So we'd like to welcome what has proven to be Baylor's dream team. Folks?
My goodness, a dream team. That's something to live up to. But we just want to start by saying how thankful we are to be able to be here. It's a big deal for us to be a part of this community. And even, I want to say, maybe an hour or two after we got here, our first visit, we were referring to North Bay as we. Like, we were part of the community. And we hope that you'll let us be a part of that. You can vote later if we're allowed to join. But, well, we won't talk about that right now. But we have a picture from our first time here, right in front of Lake Nipissing. We brought the fan to make our hair blow beautifully in the wind. But first, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Sarah.
I'm Kevin. I'm Jared. I'm Joe.
So we're going to dig right in with the agenda. I'm going to start and talk about the survey information, just kind of a little methodology, exactly what we did to come to these conclusions, and then detail our objective for these 2 semesters. Because we're going to go, us four are going to go into the big bad world in a few weeks, which is a little scary, but we believe that these two guys and the other 18 students are going to be able to carry out the rest of this project working with North Bay. That's something we want to emphasize, is that we're working for you guys. This is Baylor's opportunity to be able to make a difference, and we are so thankful to get to work with y'all. And then we're going to talk about survey findings. Kevin's going to give some overarching themes, some really important key differences that we saw. And then Joe's going to come forward and talk about 5 key types of North Bayites that we saw jump from our data that are very important differentiators in these types. And then Jared's going to come forward, talk about the key issues. We have some overarching issues, and then finish up with some recommendations. So let's dive right in. We keep talking about this survey, and hopefully y'all have personal experience with the survey, because over 4,500 of the population of North Bay did take the survey, which is incredible. That's over 2 times the amount that we need to be statistically significant when we're talking about data. If we were to do this in Toronto, that would mean we would have had over 250,000 respondents, which is an incredible response. And just want to reiterate how thankful we are for the feedback, which means that all of this data is a correct reflection of the population of North Bay. And to further push that fact, we're going to talk about the population of North Bay in relationship to the demographics of the survey that we conducted. And we used, in the blue, you can see our survey responses, and these are the demographics of the survey responses. And the green is population data from StatsCan and the 2011 census. So the important part is to see that this data follows closely with what we were able to collect, validating what we are able to connect from this to be true. So especially, we can just look at the gender comparison. The women came out in full force, which I'm thankful for. Way to go, women. And then the First Nations response is very similar. There's just a 4% difference here, which is very impressive, and we're thankful for that. Moving forward, we talk about the population age. And as we're looking at the blue and green bars again, they follow very closely, which just talks about the validity of the responses. And then next, we look at this industry slide. Yes, very detailed, but this is the industries that people selected that they were a part of. The most important part of this slide are these 2 tall bars here. We see that education services as well as healthcare are largely represented, which are 2 of the very key industries of North Bay as a whole. Shows that we're getting accurate information from the survey responses in a wide range. And then we look at income levels. This distribution follows correctly as well. So you're just able to see that this is validating the survey responses. And by getting such a large sample size of over 10% of the population, that makes sure that we are able to smooth out any of the outlying factors to show that this is very valid information. And this is our objective statement. It has a lot of key punchlines, but I'm going to read it for us and we can talk about it. The Baylor team will work with North Bay to identify and address key issues to catalyze and strategize for the future. So that's a lot of depth in those words. But this semester, through the survey and through our analysis, over 100 hours of pouring through this data, which we're hoping to show y'all in a very clear manner, we were able to identify some issues. And this presentation of the data will catalyze future growth that next semester's team will be able to take care of through addressing and strategizing for the future with North Bay. It's definitely a connection that we are moving with North Bay, for sure. And now I'm going to bring up Kevin Mitchell to talk about the overarching survey findings.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully everyone can hear me back there. If you can't, just shout out at me. So first thing I want to do is mention that I don't have a degree in psychology, but we're going to talk about emotions really quickly. And so in these findings, we had key or initial reactions to the data results. And so our initial reactions are reflected through these color codings. So we have green, which is what we perceive as positive. Then we have yellow, which is neutral or comparable. And then we have red, which is negative or something that we need to address. It's a delta, something that we need to stop, slow down, and pay attention to. So Sarah alluded to the different categories of questions that we had. And that first category is happiness, trust, and the future. So if you look at the top, 79% of people, total respondents, said that they like living in North Bay. That's great. That's a positive number. That's something we can work with. And then 91% of those total respondents said that they think that growth is important for the future of North Bay, right? That makes sense. But there's a disparity. If we look at the bottom, we see 46% of people say that they do not trust the city government. And then 50% of the total respondents say that they do not understand the plans of North Bay clearly. So again, here's a delta. Here's an opportunity for us to take advantage of something that needs to be changed. So our next group of questions was taxes and outlook. And we wanted to emphasize taxes because throughout the survey, it showed as a point of contingency. Over and over again, taxes came up as an issue. So 13% of the total respondents in our survey said that they think taxes is comparable to other cities. So obviously that number needs to increase. And then 15% of the total respondents say that they think that tax dollars are used effectively. So, I mean, at first that was a jaw-dropping number for us. It was like 13% and 15% are clearly not numbers that are ideal or what we would want them to be. And then 19% of total respondents say that they are optimistic about the future of North Bay. So again, here's another visual of some of these key statistics. So if we look at satisfaction versus pride, we find again, 79% of people like living in North Bay. But when you compare that to the bottom number, 59% of people say that they are proud of North Bay. And then we have to distinguish between liking North Bay and being proud of North Bay. One's internal, and that's an internal locus of control, and the other is external. 67% of people say they think their friends like living in North Bay. So again, there's this disparity between, and this gap between what I think of North Bay and what I think other people think of North Bay. If we go to the next category, we asked managers about their perceptions of the city. 50% of managers were optimistic about the future of North Bay. And that's a good number we saw, and that's comparable to a lot of data that's out there in comparison to Canada as a whole. And then 26% of managers say that they can find qualified workers easily. And again, that's a delta point. If we look at total respondents, we see that 61% of people believe, or respondents believe, that pay is competitive with other cities. And then 76% of total respondents say that they're missing some key business opportunity. So again, here's an opportunity for us to take advantage of a delta and move forward in terms of economic growth. So we asked our respondents about confidence in the job market, and here's another staggering number. Only 10% of people said that they think they could find employment if they were laid off in the next 3 months. And 10% said they could find employment in the greater Nipissing region. 64% of people said, or total respondents said they could find employment in the greater Ontario region. Some of this data is comparable to what we found in research that does census on US and Canada numbers. But again, that's an opportunity for change. So when we analyzed all the data and we started to aggregate everything, we found that there are two key types of people, right? There's the most satisfied citizens, and then there's the least satisfied citizens. And so we asked people, in order to categorize them into these buckets, if they liked living in North Bay. So for the most satisfied citizens, we found that the trend went up as age went up. So the older you are, or the older age group that you're in, the more satisfaction you have. We also want to point out some other key pieces of information. 58% of people in this most satisfied category make $50,000 or more annually. And again, here's another salient point. 29% of people trust city government or North Bay as compared to the total respondents number of 24%. So the most satisfied people tend to trust the city government slightly more than the general overall total respondents. And then if you look at the least satisfied people, we see this kind of flips in the other direction. The most least satisfied, if that makes sense, is the 18 to 25 range. And so in this grouping, 33% of this least satisfied grouping of people make $50,000 or more annually. And then 7% trust the city government as compared to the 24% for the total respondents. So again, this least satisfied grouping is less trustful of the government, they make less, and then 60% of those people are college and university graduates as compared to 68% for total respondents. So here you can just see the juxtaposition between the least satisfied and the average, and then the most satisfied and the average. And we think that's pertinent information, and that's information that the city and the community can take forward. So in the end, we want to mention some other key findings. And we found that there was a strong relationship between liking living in North Bay and trusting the government. And if you take a step back, you would see that this makes sense, right? If you like living in your community, you probably trust the government and vice versa. And then when we ask people, what are some of the best features of your community, of your city, we found that these were the top 3 answers. Number 1, beautiful views with 75%. Number 2, outdoor activities. And number 3, friendly people. Now, if you do quick math, you realize it doesn't add up to 100%. But what people were able to do was multi-select. So some people were able to come in and say, I think beautiful views, outdoor activities, and friendly people are the most important parts of North Bay and the best features. And so now I'm going to pass it off to Joe, and he's going to talk about the types of North Bayites.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so we've thrown a lot of numbers at you. Now we're going to talk about some characters. We're going to talk about some types here. Now, let me preface some of this talk about types of North Bayites. You're sitting out there, and I may go through all 5 of these, and you may say to yourself, man, I'm none of those. That's okay. It's all right. You're not necessarily any of these types. In fact, you could be 3, 4, or 5 types. You'd be hard-pressed to be a millennial and a manager and somebody considering leaving and what have you, but we'll get into that here in just a second. This is not an indictment of if you're not one of these 5 types, you're not a typical North Bayite, because Kevin's talked about the most satisfied and least satisfied. That's giving us a good cross-section of the city. We're talking about some important factors for driving economic growth in North Bay in the future. That's why we identified these key groups. We've titled them, and these titles aren't necessarily value statements either. We're not saying that the core, well, these are the important folks. What we're saying is this 26 to 45-year-old age range, this is the group of people that's going to be in the workforce of North Bay, ideally for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So their views on career advancement, on job loss, on economic growth for the future, those are important views. The boss, these are folks who identified as being managers or owners of businesses in North Bay, folks who we need responses on. The contemplators. We asked a question about whether or not respondents were considering leaving North Bay within the next 6 months. 15% may seem like a little bit of an alarming number. We have no expectation whatsoever among our team that 15% of the city is leaving in the next 6 months. These are just people considering leaving in the next 6 months. And we wanted to find out some of the reasons why, so we isolated that group. The future, well, we have to talk about millennials. If you haven't seen a newspaper article or an online article about millennials, you haven't opened a newspaper or your web browser in a while, we're going to talk about them. They're the future of the up-and-coming workforce. And then the naysayer. And those are the folks that we've identified as disliking living in North Bay, but have no intention of leaving. We've identified them somewhat as those who have broken caps lock keys. So the core, this 26 to 45 age range, 25% of them are born and raised in North Bay. 29% of them are born, raised, left, and returned to North Bay. That's, again, kind of in line with that 50-50 split. The overwhelming majority, more than 80% of this group, have a higher education, meaning they have finished a college diploma, university degree, master's degree, or PhD. But this is one of the alarming statistics. 50% more likely, this group is 50% more likely to be considering leaving North Bay for reasons of career advancement. This is the economic engine of the city, and that's a big driving force for thinking about leaving the city. So this is our core economic engine, 26 to 45. The boss, 20% of our respondents identified as managers. This group is 23% more likely not to trust the city government. They are 23% more likely to think that the government doesn't value their input. They are 23% more likely to think that tax dollars are used ineffectively. 37% of managers think that they have access to support for their business. And 39% think North Bay is a good place for business. These are business managers and owners. These are not necessarily positive statements, but this last graph here at the bottom, we think gives some positive insight that maybe opinions aren't good now, but there's still an optimism within this segment that gives us an opportunity for growth in the future. And this future business outlook, 50% of managers are optimistic about the future of their business in North Bay. Compare that with a total population of 19% that are optimistic for the future. Managers are overwhelmingly more optimistic, and that's definitely something we can use as an opportunity for future growth. Then that 15% that's contemplating leaving North Bay in this next 6 months. 75%, 3 and 4, have higher education degrees. 25% make less than $35,000 a year. 71% of this group does not trust the city government. That is much higher than the average. But 53% like living in North Bay. Now, as Kevin pointed out, there seems to be a relationship between those two figures, between like or dislike living in North Bay and trust of city government. This group is actually one of the data points that falls outside of that. This group likes living in North Bay and doesn't trust the government. Makes them a little bit odd, but it also tells us that the reason that people are considering leaving North Bay has nothing to do with liking it here. It has to do with these two factors at the bottom. 53% are considering leaving for career-related reasons, and 33% addressed cost of living. And I bet you can all imagine that taxes form a large part of that. We've seen those responses, and you saw the tax slides that Kevin presented earlier. So that's a big part of that cost of living category. Our millennial group, the 18 to 25-year-olds, this is a lot of college students, but not entirely college students or university students. Not a huge ton of difference here. These first two categories, they are slightly less excited about living in North Bay. They're slightly less proud of living in North Bay, but not hugely less proud. Maybe that's a little bit surprising. Maybe you think that young people don't like living here. On average, they're actually pretty content. But they're much more content than the general population in two key areas. They think North Bay has a stronger, brighter future ahead of it, and they're more optimistic about jobs in North Bay. So those are two key categories that you really want to see from your emerging workforce, and then we see that as an opportunity to build excitement within that age range. So this last group, the naysayers, is, first of all, we have to say it's only 7.5% of the population. Okay? This is only 7.5% of the population. That's pretty small. They are, on average, more likely to think that the leadership of the city does not communicate effectively, to not understand the plans and goals of the city, and to distrust the city government of North Bay. And we think that these first three are actually kind of in line here. We think that there's a connection between these three. The fact that the city's not communicating and they're not communicating goals and plans is leading to distrust. These three numbers are strongly enough in line with one another that we see a positive correlation between these three figures. Then lastly, 78% versus 18% are not proud to live in North Bay. So, again, I say it's worth saying that it's only 7.5%. But these are clearly some issues that need to be addressed because they represent a large and vocal minority in the city. All right, we're now going to pass it off to Jared to talk about our key issues.
All right, thanks, Joe. So my goal here is to bring this all together. What are the three key pieces that really tie all of these data points together, and how can we address these going forward. And so the first one is communication. We think this is communication amongst the citizens of North Bay and the government of North Bay. How can we communicate better as a whole, everyone, all together? And we think that this is a key piece that needs to be addressed going forward, and we've developed some plans to hopefully do that in phase 2, which I'll talk about in a minute. The second piece is cohesion. We've got to bring people together. North Bay, people like living here, but how do we bring people together? We've got several different groups that we would love to see come together, and that includes the government, coming together with the citizens of North Bay and really forming a united community that can drive growth forward, and we think that's definitely possible. And then the final one is strategy. We've got to come up with a comprehensive strategy to drive future business growth, to retain some of our young people, and hopefully make North Bay's future brighter than it is currently, and we think that's certainly possible. So there's really 4 ways that we want to break this down for our phase 2 group that's going to take over this project next semester. And the first one is talk. And this is a crucial one. And so if we can go to the next slide, you can see 47% of all respondents feel that the city government is not effective at communicating with citizens. And in America, we want to hear less from our politicians, but that's not the case with this, right? People want to hear more. And that's a serious thing. People want to be able to communicate with their politicians, especially regarding the plans for the future of North Bay and what we can do going forward. And I think that's very important. And so a subset of that group, managers, 55% were critical of city communication, which I think speaks to the point even more. But I want to reiterate the point that Kevin made, and I think it's a very valuable point, that the difference between liking North Bay and being proud of North Bay. Liking North Bay is a very internal reaction, and 79% of people agree with that. But 59% being proud of North Bay is a little less than we would like. That means some people aren't necessarily going to go out and tell their friends, hey, I live in North Bay, I like living in North Bay. There's some hesitation there, and maybe you guys have experienced that yourself. But we want to get rid of that. We think North Bay is a great place to be, and you guys should be proud of where you're from. It's awesome. We've been here a couple times and have enjoyed it every time, and so we want to build that civic pride, and we think that's certainly possible going forward. And again, the key themes that this addresses that we found in the survey and in our talks with city leadership are communication and cohesion. We think talking, just something as simple as talking, can really bring people together and bring a brighter North Bay. And so the next point is retain. How do we keep some of our young people? We got 2 excellent universities, in Nipissing University and Canadore College. They're both excellent institutions, and we've met with both of them and really like both of them. But how do we keep the people that they're graduating? We think that's key to North Bay going forward. And so if you'll pull up the slide, and this is just about keeping both our students and our older generations as well. And so 53% of the contemplators that Joe talked about earlier like living in North Bay. So just to reiterate that point, because we think it's huge, people aren't leaving North Bay because they don't like it. People like it here. They're mostly leaving for career opportunities. And as you can see, 53% are the people that are considering leaving for career opportunities. And so at the bottom, we've broken it down by reason. And so the number 1 reason is limited opportunity. People feel like they can't achieve their career goals here by staying in North Bay. The second one is cost of living at 33.4, and you guys saw the tax slide earlier, so that shouldn't be too terribly surprising. But when you add up the next 2, which is 10% pursue new opportunity and then 7% loss of job, that brings you to the 53% that are leaving for career-related opportunities. And we think that's a big point of emphasis for phase 2 of this project, is how do we address that? And again, we think the key themes it identifies are communication and strategy, and we think that those 2 things can really help solve this problem. And so the next theme that we talk about is sell. How do we sell the community? And this is really 2 parts to this. The first piece is how do we sell the community externally to business managers and business owners that are looking for a new place to locate their business. We think North Bay provides an excellent, viable option, but it's how do we communicate that? And so the key statistic that led us to this was 67% of respondents felt that North Bay was missing key business opportunities. And then a subset of that, which we thought was even more important, the managers, the people that live and breathe the business environment, 75% of them thought we were missing key opportunities, which is great because that means that as a community, we feel united behind something and can go and address this and bring in those communities because North Bay is a viable place for business, we believe. And then to just kind of reiterate the point is how do we keep our managers that are already here content, which is a big piece of it as well, not just external, but the people that are already here. How do we increase their satisfaction and increase their business presence? And so 2 key statistics to the point of that were 39% of managers think North Bay is good for business, and then 37% think they have support from local entities for their business. And again, we think cohesion and strategy, we're thinking selling can really attack these, and we're going to have a team dedicated to hopefully selling North Bay and coming up with a strategy for selling North Bay during phase 2 of the project. And so our final point is develop, and develop is really centered around developing a blue, overwhelmingly they need work. And so the way that we came to this is the blue is pretty much reasons why people leave. People aren't leaving because there's not enough to do. 80% like living here, so I think that speaks to that as well. People are leaving because of work and cost of living, and I think that speaks volumes. So what we want to do is develop a strategy that first focuses on let's provide the basic needs that people have to have met before they can truly enjoy a city, and that's a great place to work and a great place to live. And we think a lot of that exists already, but it's about how can we grow it and how can we accentuate and bring out the great things that are already happening here. And so I'll turn it back over to Sarah to wrap us up and hopefully bring in one of the more fun slides.
Thank you, Jared. Yeah, I really get to wrap up with our favorite question, and maybe yours as well. When we asked, how would you describe North Bay in one word? And so this is a word cloud that gives the words that were most often responded in the largest font. So it's going to pop up here. I'm going to give you a second. It's interesting, right? Lots of different things. Okay, things that jump out initially. Home, right? Beautiful, comfort, friendly, peaceful. But as you look a little closer, which I think I heard the people talking about, there's some negativity in here. And that is a really good representation of what the survey told us about. Continue to look, it's interesting. We looked at this a lot. So as you can see, people love it here, but there are definitely opportunities for growth that Jared, Kevin, and Joe also pointed out. We're really excited to be able to address these with you in our second phase, and are so incredibly thankful and humbled by the opportunity to work with you guys. And we hope to continue moving forward. Maybe we'll get to come back up to North Bay and see some snow on the ground. That would be fun. But we say we brought the warm weather with us, so sorry you guys. But thank you so much for this opportunity, and we're gonna transition to our panel portion at this point. Thank you.
So we're going to try to be as quick and efficient as possible, but we're going to address the most common themes and questions that have come up since we began this project. So we'd ask our Baylor team to come up. You folks are more than welcome. I think this is on, right? Okay, it's a pleasure to have these folks here. We're cramming up the front, cramming up terminology. Tim and I are going to ask a bunch of questions, and we'd appreciate a response from the Baylor team. Just off the cuff, we've known these folks for many, many years, and this is just our Baylor family's opportunity to look at the project and provide some next steps. So firstly, I want to talk about the data integrity and reliability. We've been very careful to not let any outside influences impact our data, nor have we shared the data with anybody. We've been very cautious as to how we've handled that data. And we're going to have folks that say, maybe we didn't do that, and maybe this data doesn't truly reflect North Bay. Once and for all, how can we address that question? I don't even know if we need the mic. We're kind of loud, but
Can you hear me okay?
I'll pass it.
Excellent. There we go. There are 4 people in the world in the whole world who have access to the unrestricted data from the survey. I'll tell you that. And they're the 4 people standing right here. It's a little scary. We're considering not traveling on a plane together, but truly, as Sarah said, getting double the number of results that we needed, 4,500 to, if you haven't been through graduate level business statistics like we have been forced to. Yes and no. May not sound like a lot, but really when you're talking about statistics, that is a great sample size. So it gives us a really, really strong data point for our data. And like I said, the 4 of us are the ones who have been analyzing this data, and we've put in well over 100 hours in analyzing all the results that we have. And we're going to pass that data on to the Phase 2 team, and they will be the only ones to look at it. They're going to review a lot of the qualitative responses that you gave. We know that a lot of you spent a lot of time on that, and we're excited to have them have an opportunity to dig even deeper into those.
Thank you, Joe. When we talk about the data, 46% not trusting the municipal government, that's a pretty strong number. That's a pretty high number. You might be surprised that it's not far off from the national average. So the data reports a better situation than many of us thought, but still there's substantial room for improvement. And also to call attention to the outlook in terms of if folks lost their job in North Bay, only 10% feel confident they'd find another one. Look at the provincial number, it's just around 60%. We'd expect that to be, with the size of the province of Ontario, we'd expect it to be higher. We'd expect it to be north of 80%. So that's a reflection not just on the community of North Bay, but the province as a whole. There's not a lot of confidence in core areas. So let me ask you folks, we talked about the naysayers. Should that be our focus, or should we focus on the core, which many of these folks here represent, which are folks that truly care, they want a better community, but just a little put off by what we're seeing at times?
This is something we spoke a lot about, especially regarding the naysayers. Can you guys hear me? Is it on? Yeah, good enough? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'll just talk. So this is something we talked a lot about, and we don't think it's necessarily too important to focus on the naysayers. What we think should happen is we should focus on the core and driving the economic growth of the city. And we think if we drive the economic growth of the city, we'll naturally see that number come way down. And the reality is you're not going to please everybody. Some people just won't be happy, and that's understandable. That just happens. It's a part of life, and we realize that. So we don't want to necessarily focus on the naysayers. We just want the positive voices to ring louder than the naysayers, which we think is absolutely positive, or could absolutely happen going forward. And so it's about how can we make those positive voices louder, because they're out there, and then how can we increase the contentness of the core and their happiness. And we think that's definitely a possibility, especially when we look for ways to bring jobs to the area and bring down that cost of living, hopefully.
Alrighty. We've talked much about the municipal government here. We didn't necessarily differentiate between the mayors, city councils, city employees. Would you say that the results are an indictment of one person or group, or is it more important moving forward that we focus on the collective?
Based on the data that we collected and that was represented in the presentation, we felt that it was not an indictment of one specific person or group. So moving forward, it's important to know that collectively you have to work together to achieve economic development. And so that's where we talk about that cohesion, that strategy, the development, and the communication. That all has to intertwine together to move forward as a city.
I'm glad you said that, Kevin, because it ties beautifully into our next question. You guys highlighted the core areas: strategy, cohesion, communication. They're difficult to argue against, right? Can you provide us some context as to why those 3 areas are so important, they're so key as we move forward?
When we're talking about those key areas, I'd like to say that not one can move well without the other. They all are intertwined pretty well. We could say a braid, if you will. They're a braid of issues to focus on, because it's important that we have an overarching strategy. But that strategy doesn't work if different parts are moving at different rates. And then even if we have a great strategy and people moving together, if we don't communicate it clearly, if y'all don't know what's going on, your trust is not going to improve, or your satisfaction is not going to improve. I think that's the way that those move clearly together and will move North Bay forward in the future. There you go.
So for all of our business students up here, we often say business is business. You're here in North Bay working with a municipality. Some might say they're completely different. What parallels did you folks draw on the similarities between business and municipality that helped you prepare your findings?
How much time do you have?
Another hour.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So there are some distinct differences. Obviously, if you live in a city and you don't like the product the city's selling you, you could move, but your likelihood there is not very high. Whereas if a business is selling a product you don't like, you don't buy it. Pretty easy. So it's a little bit more of an entangled relationship. You're kind of stuck to dance with the one that brung you, as we say in Texas. So you have a little bit more intertwining with the city on that front. But really, when we're talking, our study is focused on economic development more than anything else. We're not focused on politics. We're not focused on religion. We're not focused on any number of other areas that we could branch off into that really do make cities and businesses different. We're focused on the business side of things. So that's a particular focus for us, as well as the fact that the things that we're recommending: communication, selling strategy, developmental strategy, talent retention strategy. These are core business areas and areas that we study a lot and that we feel are very natural outflows of the data that we received. So we're making the business recommendations that we can. And there are a lot of human interest pieces. The communication, Sarah talked about, people, and Jared talked about just needing to get some of those positive voices louder. That's a human behavior side that is on the city. It's our job to make recommendations, and the city's going to have to execute it, and that includes everybody in this room. So,
would it be fair to ask our strategic expert about business versus government? That comes out. That's been a consistent theme from day one. That's great.
Yeah.
But they don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is different from business.
Yeah. As Joe and others are saying, certainly there is a difference between business and government, and we know that. But overall, again, keying off of that, in both organizations, you need an overarching strategy, a direction, where we're going, how we're going to get there. So where are we today, where we're going to go, how we're going to get there. And what that takes is leadership and people working together. So if you go into any organization that wants to pursue a particular initiative, what do you need to do? Mobilize people. If we go into a municipality such as here, what do you need to do? Mobilize people. So I think there are lessons both ways, and I've looked at both. So if you look at municipalities and then corporations, I think municipalities have more potential of mobilizing the leadership dimension than companies do. So the advantage is that you do have people. The advantage is, the good news is, we're in a sense stuck, and I want to use that word intentionally. This is where we live. This is important. Businesses will come and go over time, stay put, not stay put, and we can see the history of North American cities where that has occurred. But North Bay, the core, the people, your love for the city, that stays, and that does have an impact for generations. So from business, we're not borrowing a lot. We're actually looking at just the idea of leadership as we pursue that overall direction and vision. So I think that's important.
And Dr. Creaney and Lori, if you'd like to speak to the massive success of the Focus Firm project, if you don't mind.
We've been doing the Focus Firm project with our MBA students since 1998. We partner with a company or entity each semester. So they have a semester-long project. And we'll get the Texas twang out of there if we can. But the opportunity for these students to apply what they're learning in all those other classes on a real situation in real life is just critical to the success of their educational experience at Baylor. So we are very grateful to have the opportunity to follow up on what Dr. Creaney said, to be able to show these students the same situations that happen in municipalities and government is what they're learning in the business classrooms. So they can become, they're going to start their young careers and go out and work in the workforce, but they can apply what they learned in business school in their city life in their community as well as in their jobs. So for us as a focus firm, the successes over the years, Dr. Creaney can speak to those too. We've worked with some very large companies and very large situations and organizations. We get a chance to partner, and it's an incredible opportunity for Baylor to learn from you all in this particular 2-semester project. And Dr. Creaney, you've been doing this since the beginning, so which one stands out to you, or is there any success that you always look for in a project?
I think what we see here, which is transparency, and I go back to the survey responses and the over 10%, which, as these guys indicated, is incredible. And so that says we're transparent, we're willing to be vulnerable, we're in this together. And I think those organizations just over time, since the late 90s, who've been doing this a while, those are the successful ones. We're not looking at just say a balance sheet of a company or an income statement or what their public reports are, but we're getting in the heart and soul of the organization of, in this case, North Bay. And so that's where we learn the most, and we're grateful for that exposure, and certainly view this as a partnership between Baylor University and North Bay. So appreciate that.
And for folks that aren't convinced, having been through a number of these, the Baylor Focus Firm project has contributed to helping to curb gun violence in American schools. It's been responsible for the launch of national restaurant chains, billion-dollar-plus investments at Dish Network, the acquisition of EDS by HP. So some of the most senior and most influential leaders that we speak about in global business have bought into this concept. And so it underscores the significant gift that you folks are giving to our city. So we're eternally grateful to you folks. Let me, as we work towards our close, it has come out in the survey that we think we're a heck of a lot more welcoming as a community than we are. We think we're pretty welcoming, and some folks think we're not as welcoming as we should be. So I've got to ask you, it's how have you been treated? Let me put that to you. And does that have any relevance to our prospecting, to our growth and development, making people feel at home?
Yeah, I think it has extreme relevance. And so from day one, even when we visited in October, it's been first-class treatment the entire way. We couldn't be more thrilled with, from the time we checked into the hotel, we were just throwing gifts at us and everything. People welcomed us every step along the way. Even as we arrived last night, we were greeted at the airport at 10 o'clock. I don't know when we flew in. It was late, probably like 9. But yeah, every step of the way we've been greeted with so much generosity and so much gratitude. And we think that using that template for when potential business opportunities come along and greeting those decision makers the same way, we don't know how a business manager could turn that down as a place of business to come to North Bay. We think that it's been that welcoming to us personally, and to take that template and apply it to our economic development, we think it'd be huge.
Excellent. Good to hear. In terms of next steps, we've enjoyed working with these 4 up to 5 hours a day. And we've been in contact. I think they're looking forward to not hearing from us. We are family. I don't know what that means, but I'm glad. But we usher in a new era, if you will, and that's phase 2. And so this initiative by the Invest North Bay Board, we now have a good read on the feedback of folks in the community, how folks feel. Not a single person had that data. We now know, so we're going to digest that and we're going to move that forward. So I'd like to ask our 2 leaders that have been heavily vetted by Baylor, what do you look forward to in phase 2, and what are your thoughts on helping us charge forward in developing strategy?
Well, really looking forward to this being a collaborative effort. As you said, that this is a partnership between us and y'all, so we're looking forward to being able to make recommendations that y'all are also in agreement with. Usually with companies, you don't deal with people as much as you now are with the municipality, so we get to work with people, and that's a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of play off that a little bit. I was really thrilled to have this experience to come out here. And when the Hutchinsons came out and told us about this opportunity we were going to have at the beginning of the semester, it was really nice to be able to come and truly impact the lives of people and get personal and just be able to improve your community and kind of have that one-on-one relationship, to know you really made a difference in somebody's lives. And I really, really appreciate that experience that you guys have given us. And I look forward to working with everybody back at Baylor and working with you guys and seeing the end result.
Phenomenal. As we close out, we're going to call the mayor and the chair of the Invest North Bay board up for closing remarks. But I'd like to really acknowledge that this has been a team effort. A lot of folks often use that phrase or that term loosely, team effort. There are so many people behind the scenes so vested in this success, and I can tell you as an outsider coming in with Tim to pitch this, we didn't encounter a single roadblock. As a taxpayer, that made me feel quite good, that qualified insight, if you will, not just a bold idea without any plan, would be accepted by the city. And no one at City Hall, no one on the board, no one in the community has actively tried to derail this project. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They've been supportive, and I think that says a heck of a lot about the community, and specifically the incredible, mostly all-female team of economic development, Erin, Tanya, Lauren, and Anna Marie, who have bent over backwards to make sure that this project moves forward and that the data is available. So I am, on behalf of the whole team, extremely grateful to the leadership, and would ask you to stay engaged and continue to advocate for what we call a brighter tomorrow. Folks, is that not a lot has happened. Look what's happened in 90 days. Thousands of you have had a conversation in the right way, in a meaningful way. So we're moving in the right direction. Keep the lines of communication open. Your volunteer Invest North Bay board is doing all they can, and I'd just like to say a very heartfelt thank you to Baylor for making this possible. Thank you very much, folks. Paul and the mayor will provide closing remarks. The media is more than welcome to scrum with the folks, and anyone who has any questions, hang out. We will hang around. We will answer anything, and again, keep those lines of communication open.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it was the Invest North Bay board had the opportunity to see this presentation this morning, and I can say myself and our board members were not surprised by any of the data that they've presented. And you know, when they say trust in government, don't think it doesn't sting, because it does. And when I asked them the question, wow, like, they don't trust government, and I know it's not just the mayor and council and city staff. They said, Al, you don't have to worry, it's the same right across North America. You're kind of in line with everybody else. That doesn't mean it didn't sting. And what I took out of it was it can't just be the municipal government, and it can't just be Invest North Bay. It can't be just one group or another. It takes a whole community to be able to build a community. And I think the message, and I asked them this question, I said, what is the message that we need to bring forward? And they said, this is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity for our city if you can engage everyone and have them sell your city and promote your city. And the naysayers, I won't use the words that they used in the closed meeting, and that was the question we asked too. Do we engage the naysayers? Because we see them on the blogs all the time, don't we? That everything's bad and the sky's falling. And their recommendation was to ignore them and to have people with positive attitudes kind of drown them out. And I think that was important. So from a city perspective, we've developed this Invest North Bay. Kevin brought us Baylor. It's an opportunity for us to partner with them. We have to look at the opportunities that are facing us, deal with the challenges that we have, but shame on us if we don't take the steps necessary to build our city. And the one stat that kind of surprised me the most was that 91% of our community wants us to grow. So you should be hearing the mayor saying we need to grow. You should hear council saying we need to grow, city staff saying we need to grow. We need to Invest North Bay to say that we need to grow, but we need you as citizens to say we need to grow, and we all need to work together. It is challenging when you see the data, and because we love our city and we want what's best for us, but it's incredibly important that we all work together because not one person or organization can make a true difference. So I'll just end there. I'll invite our chair of Invest North Bay up to say a few words. And I'm just going to ask you not to leave just yet, because we actually have another little presentation for our students. I've got to know Jared and Kevin and Sarah and Joe in both their visits. And I can tell you, they tell me that they love our city. They truly do. And they believe in what they've done. And they told me that they're going to follow us moving forward to see where we need to go. And the two students that are here that are going to carry on Phase 2, I've had a short conversation with them. They're going to be coming back. I have the opportunity to go down to Baylor to speak with the city representatives of Waco. And it was really interesting. Waco, they were telling me, was further behind than where we are. And in 12 years, they've turned that city completely around. And now it's almost one of the most successful cities in Texas. So that is the opportunity in front of us. So I want to thank each and every one of you. We're going to bring you up very shortly after Paul speaks to present you with a little gift from the citizens of North Bay.
Well, thank you, Alan. Thanks, everyone, for attending. You know, as a lifelong resident of North Bay, a short period of time, 6 years in the United States, in Washington and Point South, it occurs to me that we're really at a turning point. Growing up in North Bay, I was brought up on the history of a resource-based economy, first the forestry industry and then a transportation center with the railway, then telecommunications. It was always a tourist center. We had the incredible good fortune of the 60s when the military base was enlarged significantly in North Bay. And I think we always knew what we were. And today, and it's nobody's fault, I think we're at a point where we have to decide what we're going to be in the next phase of North Bay's evolution. And I don't think anybody's got an easy answer to that. And I think the good news is this engagement of Baylor came along at a perfect time. We're going to need everybody that loves this city to help us decide what we're going to be when we grow up in Phase 2. And it's a perfect opportunity to do it. As a former management consultant, I traveled the world, and I can tell you this engagement is worth millions of dollars. But what I told the undergraduates today is it's actually priceless. We never had an impact as Deloitte or PricewaterhouseCoopers of the nature and the type that these folks will have working with us in partnership and the impact it will have on North Bay if we do it right. I think we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our kids to get this right, and I welcome everyone's participation in the days ahead. There'll be public sessions, there'll be engagement sessions, and we'll need your help in doing it. So I want to thank Baylor again for being part of this. I think the difference that they will make by being engaged here will be profound. So I want to thank the Hutchisons, Mayor Al, and everybody that attended today. Work with us in the future, and let's get it right. Thank you.